Good morning. I'm Ryan Leopard. Welcome to Our Neutral Voices Presents a Financial Pillar. Joining me today, once again, we have James Scott and Mildred Lopez.
Good morning.
From Our Neutral Voices. And we have a special guest today, my first time meeting you, Ramadan, and I know you told me to stick to the first name, but I'm going to try here. Abdul Aziz?
That's correct.
All right. Who, for those of you who are not familiar, and like I said, my first time meeting you, president of the Black Chamber of Commerce, right? You want to tell our audience a little bit about yourself that they may not know?
There's a lot.
Yeah? Just keep it brief.
Well, I'm originally from Detroit.
Okay.
Actually, this would mark my 40th year in Fort Wayne.
Okay. Awesome. Good.
40
Lions
years,
fan?
That's a long time.
Despite the record, yes, Lions and a Tigers fan. Still,
Me too.
Still
Not
loyal.
Tigers, but Lions, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, last year gave us some hope. So, but today's topic, we're going to talk about understanding the impoverished mindset.
Yep.
And before we jump into the conversation today, we have a piece that we want you to listen to that will kind of help guide that conversation. So, take a listen.
And the idea is this, that poverty is always the result of spiritual warfare. Like, why are people poor? Understand this, before sin, there was no lack. In fact, before sin, there was lack. So I got to take that back. Before sin, there was only one thing man lacked. And the thing that man lacked was lack, right? Man had abundance of everything but one thing. And sin brought in the lack of a bunch of things and the abundance of less. So we're going to look at that this morning. I've said this before, and I'm going to show you what I mean when I say this. And it's not that first of all, let me say this. Do I believe, I've done some videos recently on God's original design for wealth, the camel in the eye of the needle. If God's original design for wealth is for his people, why are so many evil people rich and so many of God's people are broke? Really controversial stuff. And I get that it's controversial, but it's controversial because of beliefs that you've learned, not because of beliefs that you were born with.
So, James, you had sent me that video last night to kind of preview. And I can honestly say that I don't know that I fully understand the context of that. You want to help me and our audience maybe understand the point or the context of that video or that clip?
So the most relevance from that is that everything that we do in life, man, is obstructed or entangled when it comes to the spiritual realm, life, the belief system, the belief aspect of life, period, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's so deep, we don't have a lot of time to get into it, but our main focus today is just good and evil, the manipulation thereof, those that control the pen, those that make the rules, those that make the laws, those that write things that direct traffic in our everyday life. You would say good versus evil. So who writes the script that determines what group of people might live in a impoverished state?
Okay.
There is some manipulation there that kind of directs that traffic, if we would say that.
Okay.
Some people are not in poverty because of an accident. Circumstances, intentionalism from the outside influencing things to direct that traffic a certain way to keep you in that space.
And we would equate that to a good and evil
To a good
mindset?
and evil concept. That's all we want to focus on, good and evil. So when we talk about spiritual warfare in the sense of good versus evil.
Okay. Maybe that's why it took me a little bit to understand that, because it's a little too deep for me. Right? Okay. Ramadan, anything to add to that?
I right now, I can't add to that. No.
No? Mildred?
It's interesting that how James puts it with good and evil and how it applies to what we've been talking about with impoverished mindset, and how we feel in our community with the good and evil, and how sometimes our mindset are closed off to possibilities of other things and abundance because of how James says intentionalism and where we're placed in our community. So
Okay.
that's a good point.
So I'm going to jump a little off script here to my next question is why is it important for us to understand that impoverished mindset?
I mean, it's just like you prepare to take a journey or a trip, right? You want to understand what path or direction to travel in to get to your destination. And also for those that are not involved directly with the struggle, it's important to understand, and this is just my perspective in my heart, I could better assist you or help you if I at least understand. I don't have to know everything, but it's in everybody's best interest to understand. Why should I be compassionate with LGBTQ plus in their struggle? You know what I mean?
Yep.
I don't need to know
So-
everything.
So you're
but-
saying for somebody like myself that has not come from that impoverished mindset, that's why it's important for me to understand it, as well as those out there that are in that situation.
Correct.
right?
I mean,
Yeah.
because you could be intentional about trying to do a good deed, and because you are financially stable, you might just be like, "Oh, let me just give them $100," and you might do that every time you see somebody struggling because you can, right? But in all actuality, I need to understand why you're struggling, and if I come back next month, are you still in the same spot with the sign saying, "Please help"?
Not understand that you may be enabling them,
Correct.
right? You think you're doing something good, but you're
Correct.
actually enabling the mindset that they have.
That's really good because you know, as a Christian follower, the lack of knowledge the Bible talks about, you know, people perish because of the lack of knowledge, and trying to understand why we're in our situation. You know, I'm talking from personal experience. The whys. The why am I in this situation, and trying to understand and get out, not only for myself, but for my posterity, my children, because they're watching and now they're having children. And people talk about generational curses. So I want to understand the why I'm in the situation financially that I'm in, and then learn how to get out of it. So it's very important
So that's
to
key
understand.
to breaking that generational curse is
Absolutely.
you learn, each one teach one, right? You learn
Absolutely.
to teach the next generation so that we keep growing and we keep improving
Amen.
generation to generation there.
And one more thing to add to that, Ryan, I think one of the biggest things that I think we get confused is because whoever the one is that's in the struggle and those that are not directly impacted by it don't understand that there's manipulation on both sides. The media wants you to perceive it one way as to from the outside looking in, and then those that are involved in it are dealing with whoever's controlling. If I'm going to give you governmental assistance, let's just take that real quick, right? Why does our government allow somebody to continually get food stamps or any financial assistance for their entire life?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
That's crazy.
If you need it, I get it.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're capable of living a sustainable life and contribute to everything like any other working person, then why aren't you held accountable to that?
Absolutely.
There's so many pacifying things that are in place. And to me, that's to cripple and to keep people from living their full potential.
And you believe that's intentional.
Absolutely.
And it
Yes.
has to be, because they're not that simple-minded.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that they do is calculated to serve a purpose.
Okay. Gotcha. So do you believe that those that find themselves in that impoverished mindset, are they aware that they're in that?
That's a difficult question. We're going to let Ramadan grab that because he's quiet.
Ramadan.
Well, actually, I'm sitting here. I'm trying to reduce the words to express or to answer your questions. First of all, there's a compound effect. Okay, when James talks about the lawmakers and who's making the rules, who sets the stage, who sets the environment. There's an inheritance over time, and one thing builds on the other. I think that when we talk generationally, what we're talking about is a set of experiences that are passed or handed down, belief systems, and basically a subculture that's developed. Okay, and that subculture that's developed, and when I'm talking about, I'm trying to be kind here, but the majority of the people in the United States and the people that run things in the United States are not a part of that subculture. Okay, they may be a cog in the machine, they might be a sprocket in the wheel. I mean, in the watch, but they are not. They're not the people that make the decisions. They're not the people who implement. So if the majority rules, then the majority's way rules.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Now the
Agree.
compound effect of that comes to present day, and so we want to address it, and what we do is we pacify it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so when James talks about welfare for life, he's talking about pacifying.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but the offspring of that lifestyle gets handed down. That method and the utilization of that those pacifiers
Resource.
have a tendency to to perpetuate that subculture.
Mm-hmm.
We would have to, we would have to withdraw. We'd have to stop participating in things that pacify us. I'll just stop there.
Okay. So that it leads me to my question that I wanted to ask is, so who's responsible for changing that mindset? Is it our government, or is it our responsibility to change that mindset, to say we're no longer willing to accept this, we want more, right? We're going to work for more. Whose responsibility is that to change that mindset?
Well, we don't have the ability to say any one person or one group has that responsibility. We just don't have that luxury.
Combination, both?
Yeah, it is a combination. I think it starts. I think it will have to start with a certain degree of truth and honesty in the
Transparency.
situation. I don't think that people are willing to take the conversation down to the level of being truthful and honest about the situation. Once we're able to establish that, then we can start to deal with some of the problems that plague us. And then we can start to address some of the solutions later.
Okay. James, anything to add to that?
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm going to say I totally agree with what Ramadan's saying, like 100%. But to take it to another step, it starts with the head.
And who's the head?
The manipulator.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So the manipulator is the one that he built the systemic systems, created those things. He's the one that wrote the law. He's the one that wrote the Constitution, the way things exist today. So we would change the laws of our land predicated upon one's sexual preference, right? To have real conversation. But you would never address the things that you did to oppress a culture or a group of people. COVID-19 comes in and causes chaos, right? Messes with the mindset. So mental health becomes a sense of urgency in America, right? We need to address it. We need to put things in place to fix it, sustain it, and stop it from spreading like wildfire, right? You oppress a group of people for 400 plus years. You never did anything to address their issues. PTSD, to solidify them, to give them a transition in mindset. And then you begin to attack them with more systemic systems and everything. So it starts with the head.
Do you believe those things were put in place, though, because they thought they were providing a service?
No.
No?
No. Intentional.
Intentional.
It goes back to the spiritual warfare, good and evil.
I don't. Could you ask that question again, please? Do you think that it was in place?
So do you think that it was put in place to help those in poverty, right? Because we agree that, welfare system can be a positive, but if it's given for life, there's no incentive to work or better our environment. So we systematically think that that's in place to keep us down, right? Is that what we're agreeing on there?
Living in that community and having grown up that way, I totally get that. The mindset and passing it down. I grew up in the system. I'm ward of the state from a very young age. So I'm already in the system. That creates a certain mindset. And growing up that way, then I transfer that to my children. I thank God that I learned some things and my children did not carry that with them. They all work and they don't want to be stuck in that system. I have a daughter who's like, I'm not doing this. I'd rather work. I'd rather provide. I'd rather do that than try to get stuck in a system that holds you,
So would you say she was responsible for changing her own mindset?
Absolutely.
Yes.
You
And
know,
changing her situation or predicament
absolutely.
and wanting
You know,
something more?
everybody individually has that responsibility to learn either I'm going to do what my mom did and it could be stuck, or grow to change the future for my children.
James, I think we've talked before, similar situation. Single
Choice.
mom home,
Yes.
right?
Choices.
Right.
I come from a single mom home. I know what it is to see the roaches crawling around. I know what it is to not have food to eat. Lived in that space. Watch my mom struggle. Watch my mom cry. And then at the end of the day, you have to, at the age of 10, when I was on my bike, I could get a paper route and I could start to make a little money to help mama. That was the focus. You know, I still had my childhood because I ball court, do what but get out of school, roll the papers up, put them in the bag, get on the bike, do what I need to do to move. 13, 14, my mom takes me to get my work permit. I'm working at Summer Treat Restaurant right across from the complex. Grew up in the squares, you know, so grew up in the hood. Understand it totally, but the choices that we're allowed to make in the middle of the struggle. The struggle's real, right? You can't take that out of the equation, but we still get to choose. Our trajectory might be harder, might be more difficult, but it's such more pleasurable to be able to help my mom, to give to my mom, to support my mom, and to also be able to stand on my own too as best as I can.
So did you have that paper route to stand on your own, or did you do that to help mom, or
help.
both?
That was to help mom through the struggle, because I was in the middle of the struggle. I'm young. I know it shouldn't be the right thing to not have food in the house. In my mind, I'm like, we need to eat, right? So I understand that at a young age. So I'm looking at this scenario and it ain't right to me at that age.
And you made a decision at that time. I'm gonna do better.
Bro, I would never, even when I was without a job, I didn't take time to go. I'll tell you this, man, then we can move on because we got a lot to get to. I'm in between jobs. I'm an electrician by trade, right? So I'm in between jobs and I had never did unemployment. And so the time comes where somebody's like, man, you know, you can go get unemployment. So I go into the space and I see what's going on in the space. So I'm observing it. And in my mind, my heart, man, I just did not want to be there at all. I didn't want to be there. So I didn't even sign up for unemployment. I left and went looking for another job. And 2 days later, I had another job. But something in me just tells me I don't want to be a part of the system. So as much as I could sustain away from it, I don't care if I paid into it because I worked so long. I don't want to wait in line to sign up for you to give me nothing.
Then it becomes easier to take.
And we're going to see when we get to the points
that
one of the main points when it comes to a poverty mindset is that when there's something free to get in line for it. And then how that takes you to a place of complacency. But I don't want to get ahead of the game.
So that'll lead us into, we have 8 points of comparison that we want to listen to. So let's jump into the first one here. It's going to tell us the difference between an impoverished mindset, or can I do a comparison between an impoverished mindset and a rich mindset.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
All right, let's take a listen.
Dream about. Psychologists often argue that what is essential for becoming wealthy is within you. It is the way you think, your mindset. Here you have the main differences between the mindsets of rich and poor people. Number 1. Rich people focus on opportunities. Poor people focus on risks. When you have the mindset of rich people, you will see opportunities everywhere and in everything. You naturally have a firm belief in your capacities, and you don't mind taking all the chances you can. You are aware that is how you get ahead. However, if you have a poor mindset, you shy away from opportunities because you focus on risks. You are always afraid, and you tend to do only that which gives you secure winnings. This is one of the major differences. Rich people think about what they could win. Poor people think about what they could lose. Dream about. Psychologists.
So first point, I can absolutely, relate to that, being in the banking world, even myself, seeing the difference between rich people, billionaires, typically owners of companies, CEOs, things like that, the risks that they had to take along the way. Most successful business owners have started businesses that have failed. right? They don't start one business and succeed with that one and just go with that. They're typically always moving that money around, starting other businesses. Some of them succeed, some of them fail. But the key is they're not afraid to fail. You know, the rest of us, you know, we're content with our jobs because it's a paycheck, and we're scared to go out on our own. We're scared to do something different because of the risk that comes with that. We may lose that paycheck. Right? Anybody have anything else to add to that one?
Context is everything. I did want to say earlier that actually, believe it or not, I actually lived that life. I was 11, and I kept a paper route until just before graduation from high school, so 7 years. Of course, I had a second job in the mall, so I did it for some of the same reasons. My mother didn't have the money, etc. Now, when I think about changing it, though, changing this situation, there's a discipline that I had to institute. You know, I had to do without the desire for abundance, but to trust the future. So the compound effect of the discipline that was instituted, and I'd like to cite the network, but you have to build that network later. But the compound effects of being instituting discipline and being disciplined and being intentional about being disciplined set the stage or the foundation for everything else.
I think we've used that word discipline many times in our financial literacy series, right? Yeah, absolutely. So point number 2, let's take a listen to that.
Number 2, rich people think about investing money. Poor people think about spending money. One of the classic differences between poor and rich mindsets is that poor people are typically consumerists. They like to own things to appear richer than they are. They obsess about how they appear to others and are willing to save money to boost their self-confidence by buying expensive clothing or gadgets. On the other hand, rich people know that it is not about looking rich, but rather being rich, and that in order to be rich, you must invest. Rich people save money not to spend it, but to invest it and increase their wealth. So, their main focus is using money to get more money, not to spend it.
Yeah, great
That's
point on that.
interesting right there.
That one, you told me I was going to relate to a lot of these points once I hear them, and yeah, absolutely. I think I mentioned this on the last episode that some of the richest people that I dealt with at the bank, you would never know that when they walked into the bank, right? They looked like somebody who had no money in their account whatsoever. Now they probably drove a nice car when they got in there, but their dress, their clothes, that type of stuff, it doesn't
Simple.
matter.
Yep.
Really. And money is always moving. You know, there's probably a misconception out there that rich people have all this money sitting in a savings account.
Right.
No.
That's not where you put
Don't
it.
get me wrong.
It's
They have some
everywhere.
money, right, for their bills and things like that. That's more than a normal savings account. But the majority of their wealth is not sitting in a savings account doing nothing. It's not sitting in a bank account waiting to spend. It's being moved around. It's being invested, whether it be in businesses, stocks, things like that. The money is always real estate. The money's always working for them, to the point that even, you know, they will take out loans for things, right? So instead of taking money out of the market or something like that, they're going and using the equity in their house and getting a loan because they can use that money at the bank's interest rate because they know that the investment they're going to do is going to return a higher rate than that rate that they're paying, right? The money's not just sitting there in the equity of their home. The money is always working for them.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Intentionally. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Ramadan, before we go.
No, I just want to just make sure I get this out. That when I say context is everything, you know, what I'm talking about is that a video like that and the information like that is not applicable in every society. Okay. If you were to show this video in a developing nation, for example, it wouldn't apply. So that might be the mindset in America, but you know, until you've traveled and until you've met other people and how they do things, you know, you're not as likely to follow that 100%. I mean, I do believe that there's a certain collectivism. I'm just going to say one quick example. If you have a family of 5, they're all adults, the house is big enough and they have a mortgage, in 12 months you have to pay that mortgage. But if you have 6 people in the house and you split the responsibility up amongst those 6 people, then ultimately they only have to pay 2 months out of every year.
Mm-hmm.
That allows them to hold back the money and it collectivize the strength of the money.
Mm-hmm.
That is not going to be communicated in a video like that.
Mhm.
So I just want to make sure that you understand contextually that may fit for an individual mindset, but it may not fit for a collective mindset.
Good point. Thank you.
That's
Good point.
That
Yep,
is
yep, absolutely.
good.
All right, point number 3. Take a listen.
Number 3. Rich people are lifelong learners. Poor people stop learning as soon as they get a degree. People with a rich mindset are aware that to become and remain rich, you are simply not allowed to let yourself go and to neglect your education. This doesn't mean you have to have several different college degrees. Many wealthy people have dropped out of college, such as Bill Gates, for example. This means that people with a rich mindset are lifelong learners. They identify their interests, strengths, and unique qualities, and they constantly work and learn to improve themselves. People with poor mindsets usually stop educating themselves after completing some level of formal education. They usually think that that is enough and fail to comprehend the importance of constantly improving themselves and learning new things to get ahead.
Interesting.
James, anything to
Very.
add to that?
I think is relevant, not applicable in all situations,
Thank you.
but definitely is a reality
Mhm.
in a lot of places, in a lot of people's personal space. So I would definitely encourage people that are watching this and our viewers to take time in to understand your purpose, your goals. What do you want to do? What are your heart desires? And to do the things that fulfill you to make you happy, and not just settle to be stuck in any one situation or system, because you have a right to control your destiny.
Yeah. And let's clarify, because it may not be applicable to everybody when it comes to the degree aspect of
Right.
that. We'd probably
Correct.
agree to that one.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean that we can't improve ourselves and continue to learn through
Correct.
other avenues. We talked about financial literacy and the path to being financially free,
Aware.
right?
Mhm.
Is a lifelong journey of learning. We don't just stop with learning how to pay bills and earn money, right? We have to learn the other parts of that financial system if we truly want to achieve, our financial freedom. Right?
Correct.
So let's listen to the next point.
Number 4. Rich people admire and compliment other people. Poor people criticize. People with poor mindsets tend to compare themselves to others. Then they often criticize other people in order to mask their own faults and make themselves feel better. People with rich mindsets don't have the time to do this. They are busy with self-improvement. They purposefully surround themselves with great people to make meaningful connections and to learn from others. This is a very important psychological difference between rich and poor people, because if your mind is busy with criticizing others without learning from them, you are not doing anything good for yourself.
That point was interesting. I've never thought about that from the rich people, rich mindset to the impoverished mindset aspect of it. But when I relate that to when they're talking about the building of relationships, which leads to,
Yep.
I don't want to say success, but, leading to improving ourselves and our relationships within the business world, things like that. That's one thing I've learned, over the years and start to implement myself. And I've learned that not from the rich mindset, but from the ladies. I always sat back and acknowledged that every time two women meet each other, they're always complimenting each other on something. And I'm like, do they really like that, or are they just being nice? And I realized how much of an icebreaker that was. So I've started implementing that myself as soon as I noticed your shirt, James, when you came back out here on the set, right? When first thing I do is typically when I meet somebody for an appointment is, compliment them on something. I'm authentic about it. If I don't like it, I'm not going to say it, but I usually try to be aware of something that I can compliment them on to kind of break that ice and start that conversation, which deepens the relationship, I think. Yep.
True.
Ramadan?
No, I was just going to say, I think that it goes to character development. I don't think necessarily that rich people do not criticize. The people that I know
That's where, I would agree with
criticize
that.
often. So I don't necessarily assign it to that. I really believe that the development of good character
Good character.
it's what will likely promote a rich mindset.
Yeah,
And
I
that's
absolutely agree.
separate from just having money.
Right.
Okay, so I'm not, when I talk about a rich mindset, I'm actually not just talking about money.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, thank
I,
you.
Yeah,
I'm-
I absolutely agree with you.
I
there.
want to say something. I'm really glad you said that, because knowledge is power, and it's so. The video is so good. At the same time, in our community, we think that we all have a impoverished mindset. But if you look at the components of individual families, like Ramadan said, it's about character. How are we teaching our children? What are we teaching our children? And I am glad that these videos are coming up. It just confirms to me I'm doing a great job. Even though I'm in the situation that I'm in, but providing knowledge and continuing to learn. I have degrees. My children love to learn. They want to see how things work, and they put themselves in situations and opportunities for them to learn, to grow. So I'm encouraged today. So
Awesome.
Good.
Awesome. Kind of lost track of what number point we're on. Anybody
we
know?
are on number 5.
All right, let's take a listen to point number 5.
Number 5. Rich people take actions to achieve their goals. Poor people make excuses. A rich mindset is set on achieving a set goal. There are no excuses. There can only be a change of means to achieve it. Rich people know what they want, and they are prepared to go the distance to get it. Poor people are prone to making excuses and blaming their failure on any other person or circumstance other than themselves. Their minds are not set on getting what they want. They make excuses and justify themselves for their lack of success.
Okay. So, one of my takeaways from that is just the goal setting. I would think that's the big difference between a rich mindset and a impoverished mindset is that are we setting goals, right? Rich people set goals and then they set out to achieve those goals. But with the impoverished mindset, are we setting goals?
And if we set goals, are they, can we reach them? Sometimes
Are they attainable goals?
Exactly. Sometimes, just recently, I told my daughter, she wanted to do a fast, a cleanse. She said 30 days and her birthday's coming up. And she was like, Mom, I had to reevaluate what I was doing because I want to do X, Y, and Z. So I had to cut down because I know I couldn't achieve the 30 days. So I'm doing 10 days, So that mindset to be able to reevaluate, is this an obtainable goal for me? And to know when to go back and look, okay, is this good, or can I do this, or do I have to change something? Has something changed in my environment and my things? So reevaluating your goals.
So it kind of sounds like what we talked about a little bit with the budget.
Absolutely.
Right? Sit down and
Absolutely.
review the budget after we've had some time to do it and understand, is our goal attainable? If we're on pace with that goal. If we're not, do we need to change our goal? Or do we need to change what we're doing to achieve that goal? Right, reevaluating.
Yeah, I'm brought to a point of repeating somebody else. I'm not usually doing that, but there's an acronym when setting goals, and it's SMART: specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. So one thing without the other. If you're setting a goal, you're probably not actually going to be able to reach it. You can set a goal, but what, is this a realistic goal? And over what period of time? And how do I determine whether or not I'm getting closer to the goal if I measured it? And I think I have to be very specific. I need to focus on exactly what that goal is. So I actually agree with the acronym.
Absolutely. I like that.
That's, I
Yeah.
like that.
Totally
And
makes sense.
you know, my thought on the goals thing is typically when somebody's not setting a goal, it's because they're scared to fail at that goal. Where I think a rich mindset is they're setting a goal regardless. If they fail,
make
they
it.
fail. They reevaluate or they set a new goal. They're not afraid to fail at that, which goes into the risk point we talked earlier. Right.
Yep.
Okay. Point number 6, I believe we're on. Take a listen.
Number 6. Rich people have a plan to get them ahead. Poor people hope for the best. People who have a rich mindset leave very little to chance. They are ready to take action to get themselves ahead, and they know the importance of planning. Thus, they take their lives into their own hands. People with poor mindsets are inclined to rely on luck, fate, and chance to give them what they long for. The psychological difference in question here is in the activity. Rich people are proactive and they take leading parts in their lives. Poor people are passive recipients of what is going on in their lives and are unwilling to get going. This difference probably comes from the ease and risk-free nature of relying on luck and then complaining about how you are unlucky, rather than taking matters into your own hands and testing your capabilities.
That word passive did it for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Explain.
Like, well, it's the same way with Ramadan, the illustration that he gave earlier about the passive behavior and things that are implemented intentionally to cause friction or to derail you from actually accomplishing things, and then you become passive because of the struggle. Could be too much, you know, to press forward. So I just settle, be passive, and continue to accept the free things or whatever it is.
What I heard in there was, are we sitting around to wait to win the Powerball?
Right. That's what I
Or-
heard. That's what I heard.
or we win the Powerball? Or are we making a plan for how we can start our business that's going to lead to our financial freedom, right? And create our own wealth rather than hoping to win some numbers. Ramadan?
I actually believe in luck and chance. I don't believe in fate, but I do believe in luck and chance. It's just that within the context, I'm going to keep coming back to that, within the context of preparation, then yes, after you've prepared, then there is a certain element of luck and chance. If a farmer, farmer, I think one of the closest people to God, they plant their seed every year, and they basically rely on their skills, but there's an element of luck or chance that may or may not work for them or against them. It could be too much water, and all the crops are washed out. It could be too little, so that the environmental conditions could wipe out whole crops. It doesn't mean that the person wasn't prepared, but there were certain conditions that they could not control and that they were subject to. So in business, I didn't say earlier, but I am a business person. I prepare first. And there's a certain element that I cannot actually be sure about. But my belief in what I've been allowed to do to prepare helps me win in business. So I would say that luck and chance are real.
I absolutely agree with that. I mean, if you luck and chance, especially with today's environment, a lot of the successful people we're seeing, kids becoming millionaires off YouTube. 15 years ago, YouTube didn't exist. Those kids, they're not in the position they're at now. So timing, they came in at the right time. They took the chance, and it worked out for them. But timing and chance is huge as well. Absolutely.
Yeah, before we leave that, and I know like we're a little past time, so we got to crunch out the last segment. But one question before we go to the next one: is fate real?
I think fate is
Belief.
defeatist. But
Yeah.
a person says it's my fate to live an impoverished life. I would have to take them to task on that one.
I believe life presents its opportunities. Did we choose to acknowledge that opportunity and take it, or did we ignore it and let it pass by? I don't know if that's exactly fate or not. No. I think that's the decision that we made, right?
And I get that. So, we don't have enough time to pound this out, but
definitely a different topic. Another topic.
There's always, and just so that our viewing audience can get both sides of this thing. So the presence of fate versus luck and chance, I would say, is all encompassing. But we can always say at the end of whatever choices we make, whatever we choose to do in life, where we end up, our choices help that happen. The lack of the choices that we make are the results of where we are. Reality, right? But at the end of every conversation, fate meets you. Choices are not. So we get to choose what our end fate is. So the powerful thing of choice that God has given us and still the existence to say that I get to choose as I go.
Well, we do have a limited free will. There's a concern, however. I mean, there's a decision tree through life. We're always presented with a set of conditions. We have to make a decision one way or the other, which way we're going to go. You don't have the ability to do two opposing things. So the decision tree through life, I think, is circumstantial. It's based on conditions, and I mean environmental conditions, how you were raised, what were the belief systems that drove your sense of reality, and then where you are on the social ladder. You don't just decide to climb up the ladder. Oftentimes, people identify with your orientation, and those people see something that in you that they see in themselves, and then they help you. I don't think that if you're doing some things that are unrecognizable, no one really sees it.
Gotcha. Good point. All right, let's listen to point number 7.
Number 7. Rich people practice long-term thinking. Poor people think short-term. In order to achieve any goal, you often have to think long-term and to postpone immediate pleasures. Rich people are very good at this. They can invest themselves in something to get greater rewards later. Poor people's mindsets are focused on immediate rewards, and they are reluctant to pass on them in order to get rewards later. This way of thinking is linked to poor people being reluctant to take risks, as discussed earlier.
So that point that point made me think about an off-air conversation we were having the other day, right? With a young lady maybe coming from an impoverished community, and the mindset is, I need to have another baby because it's going to bring in more of that free money, right? And do you guys remember my response to that? What my thought process was? If I find myself posed with that same situation? No? That's going to cost me another $80,000 if I have another baby, right? So difference in mindset, short-term thinking versus long-term. I'm thinking over the next 18 years, it's going to cost me $80,000 plus to raise another kid, where somebody in a different mindset is looking at immediate income, not thinking long-term wise. Well, that baby and that income's only going to be around for 18 years. You're going to find yourself 18 years from now in a different position where that money's not coming in because of that.
Correct.
Yes, absolutely.
Again, it's what you're being taught, your character, your situation, your circumstances. Is how you think. It doesn't matter. It's not about color. It's circumstances, your environment, and choices. It comes down to your choice. You either take left or right. But again, it's your character. How were you raised?
If you believe that, because of what you've seen, your experience, if you believe that you're not going to live a long life, you're not going to conduct your life in a way that you can have long-term vision for it.
You're not thinking about saving for retirement if you have no intentions or thought of being
you don't think
that
you're going
age.
to reach it.
Correct.
You don't think you're going to reach it.
Yep.
I can tell you, my wife and I were married back when I was 23, and we were both the same age. And I talked to her about the future, and she says, "How do you know we're going to live that long?" Yeah, been here for 40 years now.
What's the problem? What's the problem if you don't think that long?
Yeah.
What's the problem?
it would be a big problem. She's very comfortable right now.
Glad
If you don't think long term and you do live long term, you haven't planned for it.
You
right?
haven't
You're not
planned-
financially stable. Your income, as we were talking about, the older you get, the opportunity for you to make money diminishes
yes.
greatly. If you have not planned for that, you're going to find yourself in an impoverished situation at that point in time because you thought short term, not long term. We have to plan long term for that. So, point number 8 to take us out.
Number 8. Rich people take challenges head on. Poor people never leave their comfort zone. Rich people are aware that if you want to achieve great things in life, you will have to make a real effort and face many challenges on your path. They are prepared to bear discomfort on their way to their dreams. Poor people usually remain poor because they value their comfort more. People with poor mindsets have a tendency to stay in their comfort zones where it is safe for their sense of their self-worth.
Wow.
Interesting.
So, how would we relate that to an impoverished mindset?
Can I start?
Absolutely, Mildred.
I'm being transparent. This is all about me when it comes to comfort zone. I'm a believer. I have faith, and sometimes we do get complacent and comfortable, where we're scared of what's going to happen. Am I going to fail? And sometimes God allows in my life. I can't talk about anybody else. I'm talking about myself. Sometimes God allows you to lose some things to make you uncomfortable because he wants you somewhere else in a different level. And that's humbling. And I'm sitting in that exact situation right now where he's made me uncomfortable to grow. My mindset, I can either fall and be depressed, and sometimes that happens. Or I can say, this is an opportunity for me to learn and grow and know that I have to trust and believe God because that's who I am. So, again, it's our mindset and the choices that we make.
Yep. So we would think, relating to like the welfare system, that's the problem with it, is that we're complacent with it. We're accepting of that minimal amount of money given to us for free, where we can sit at home, we can not have to go to wake up every morning, which is work in itself, a challenge there. Where a rich person is, their mindset is, I want to get up and go to work, right? It's not easy for me either, but I want to because I'm not okay with that level of income. I want more, right? It's a decision we're making with that. Ramadan?
There's a concern. The concern about what one can achieve and what one feels that they deserve. And I when I see the word comfort zone, I think that's a really funny term, because most people with impoverished minds, they don't live in comfort at all. As a matter of fact, one of the main things that keep them there is fear. It's success comes when you beat back fear.
What is that fear?
The fear of having to change, to living a life that's different from
What they know or what they grew up with.
their experience. Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it. If I'm successful, I'll have to start living my life differently, and I'll be perceived by my peers differently. And I don't think I want to do that. I think I want to stay right here where everything that I know doesn't change. And that way I don't have to deal with the fear of the unknown.
Gotcha. James?
And to expound on that word fear, let's use a direct illustration. A person that gets assistance, right, and has gotten it for a long time, the fear, it's comfortable to know that that's coming every month. You know what I'm saying? I at least have some comfort in knowing that every 30 days or whatever that cycle is, I know that that's going to come to the card, or I'm going to get that in the mail, or whatever that is, right? But then to be 100% or 99.9% accountable for yourself every day, all day, the fear of that. When you've been in that space of comfort, let's use that word, that comfort zone that last point 8 just gave us, is real. So because, and it goes back to the very beginning of everything that we talked about, the good and the evil aspect of that spiritual warfare, of poverty in that mindset. It's encompassing to understand that to be uncomfortable, to work through the fear, to get over whatever that is that's causing you. And on the show last night, Clifton, Pastor Latham, discussed his fear factor and not operating in the gift that God gave him. And to release himself and to overcome that fear, to begin to do what God called him to do. You can never be what you're supposed to be if you allow fear to taint you and to control you.
That's true. That's absolutely true.
So we talk about the good and evil, to wrap this up here, the good and evil within ourselves, right? The evil's the fear of change, the unknown. The good is we may want more, maybe we don't know how to achieve that.
Correct.
Right? Absolutely. Good points. Good point. So I know we went way over on the time today, but I really enjoyed this conversation.
Really good.
Yeah.
I could
Really good.
not imagine fitting all that into 30 minutes.
Not at all. James threw a little curveball in there when he added these points on there, and I think they're really good points. And I know you mentioned that once I see them, it was going to create some great conversation. Absolutely did. So thank you for adding those in. But to wrap this up, join us next week, Wednesday, 8:30. We're going to talk about financial stress and what that does to us mentally. And to take us out today, we got a short little clip we want you to listen to as well. But until next week, this is Our Neutral Voices. Peace.
The real question is whether we have the will. America's opportunity to help bridge the gulf between the haves and the have-nots. And the question is whether America will do it. There's nothing new about poverty. What is new is that we now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty. The real question is whether we have the will. America's opportunity